that's the nice thing is like running doesn't care. It doesn't care who you are or like what your abilities or limitations are. It's like you either do the work and get the time or you don't. Like the clock doesn't say like, well, because you have these limitations, like you're getting a better time or a worse time. It's just the time is the time. And that's what I love about running is like there's no way around it. It's like you either do the work and get the results or you don't.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Invictus Mindset Podcast. Today's guest is one of the world's best ultra runners who holds numerous world records, and he's run 7 marathons in 7 days on 7 continents. He's got a mile PR of 4:34, and his best marathon is 2:17. Today, I'm excited to unpack the story of Mike Wardian. What's up, man?
Hey, man, it's good to hear your voice and excited to be on.
Yeah, I'm pumped to chat with you, man. You've done some really cool things, known as FKTs, the fastest known times. You've done some really amazing adventures in the world of running, and now you're tinkering a little bit in the world of pickleball. Where does this mindset of play come from, man?
I think it's always been there. I think for me, it keeps things fresh and exciting and gives me a new challenge to work towards. I like being a novice at things. Like I love mastery too. Like I love being like one of, the people that has really explored their craft as much as they can and as always trying to get like that little bit more out of themselves. But I also like being a beginner and like completely unknown as to what you can accomplish. Like when I first started running, I would go to the track for my first track workout and I didn't even know what a 400 meters is, like one lap around the track. I would just be like, just tell me how many to go, So like having that same mindset with pickleball, like I just am learning how to hit like top spin right now. Like, so that excites me, that the chance to like see where you can take yourself if you put in the time and effort. And that's what I like to try to do.
That's super cool, man. I can't help but lean into that because as you can gently see behind me, a childlike mindset's incredibly important, right? Like I heard you chat with Rich Roll briefly around a beginner's mindset. And there's this one story that I heard one time around an ultra run. And somebody was literally telling me this the other day, and it was around these people embarked on a 100-mile race. And one of the people ended up winning by an insurmountable amount, by like a couple days as opposed to hours. And people were all confused. And they were like, well, how is that possible? And the winner was very confused as well. And I guess the tradition was you run for 6 to 8 hours, and then you take 2 or 3 hours off, and you kind of tinker with that strategy over time. But this particular person was like, I didn't know that I was supposed to like stop and sleep and rest. I just kept going, and it wasn't super fast. But anyway, the moral of the story being, there wasn't any sort of like preconceived notions or rules set on the winner. They were embarking with a childlike mindset and just kept practicing the art of enduring and putting one foot after the other. And when I heard that story and then I found out about you, I was like, whoa, I got to unpack the story of Mike Wardian. This guy's been getting after it for a while. And I mean, you're 48 years old, man. Like, how are you able to keep this mindset of adventure and play while simultaneously like maintaining a career and a family and maintaining your body?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's crazy. Like I'll be 49 in a couple of weeks on April 12th. So coming up on 50. I'm really excited about that. I'm excited to still, be able to do these type of things. I think I said this on Rich Roll, but I mean, I think in some of the other podcasts I've been on, but I still want to do it. I think that so many people reach a certain level and they kind of lose that drive or the fire. And I still think I'm really excited and committed to seeing like just how much further I can go and what other things I can accomplish. And so there's really no lack of desire. And I think that sometimes, when you've been doing something for a long time, it gets a little stale. And I think we touched on it earlier, but like keeping that, beginner's mindset or the growth mindset where you're like, okay, I've done this thing, and I've run a marathon, like you said, like 217, but like, can I run it in a Spider-Man costume when I can barely breathe, or like I want to try to set the world record as Forrest Gump. Like, would it be cool, like, since I ran across the country, like, and Forrest Gump inspired that, like, what time can I do for that? Or last year I ran across the entire US, which was a little over 3,000 miles. And this year I don't have as much time. So I'm going to run across Panama, I think. So it'll be from, the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean, but it'll be hopefully just less than a day, and it'll be a new FKT. So trying to find fun ways to incorporate things I like to do, and then see how well I can, execute on those things.
That's epic, man. Yeah, and I saw that you ran from California all the way out to Delaware and on
Yeah,
Route 50.
yeah,
What was that
exactly.
experience like, and how long did that take, and what were some of the peaks and valleys of the experience?
I think so. It was a dream come true. It was an experience that I had dreamed about and kind of worked towards for many, many years. I chose Route 50 because I actually live on Route 50 in
Mm.
Arlington, Virginia, and I didn't actually know that it went the entire country. And there's a pretty famous race director called Lazarus Lake, and he had planned a route similar to the one I used, almost identical even. So when he was telling me about that he was going to run across Route 50, I was like, what? That is like right by my house. So I ran with that idea, and I was like, hey, I'm going to try to do this for myself. And then it'll be so cool. Like, I'll actually literally run home. So I called the project like Running Home. And I started in San Francisco because that's one of my favorite places in the world. I've done their marathon quite a bunch.
Oh, cool.
Like, yeah, actually I ended up winning it, I think once or twice. So I have like a really good affiliation with the San Francisco area, and worked with a lot of companies. In particular, Goo has been a long time sponsor, and they're like right out in the Bay Area. So I was like, hey, I want to start and see all my friends. And like, I don't think there's anything more iconic than the Golden Gate Bridge. Like, of all the, kind of monuments around the world, you think like Eiffel Tower, Empire State Building, maybe like the Colosseum, the pyramids, and then like for me, it's like the Golden Gate Bridge is like right up there. So I figured like, wow, I should start there, and like how cool it'd be to like start your journey, and you'll always remember that day, and I really have. And then trying to finish, like, we have a place in Rehoboth Beach, and that's where my in-laws are from, and so I figured like running through DC, and a lot of people actually end up stopping in like New York or DC, but you don't actually get to the Atlantic Ocean. And so I was like, hey, I want to go all the way to the ocean and put my feet in.
Totally.
And it turned out I actually had to run the wrong way, like 6 miles from City Hall in San Francisco to put my feet in the Pacific Ocean. So like I started my day going the wrong way, 6 miles or 10K, and then went back and got on the right path. But it took about 61 days. I averaged 52 miles a day.
Mm.
Most of the time I was running 12 hours a day, trying to consume about 5 to 7,000 calories a day, which sounds like it'd be fun, but it actually is pretty terrible. I
Yeah,
don't
that's
know if
that's a
you've
lot of
tried to
calories.
eat
It's like
that
a
much.
full-time job.
It's like a full-time job while you're running. Yeah. So it's not fun. Um,
How do you get those
temperature.
calories in while moving? Is it a lot of liquid calories, a lot of goos? Like, how do you get them in? And then, like,
Actually,
what's the digestion like?
yeah, actually, it was a lot of real food. So the first couple weeks, I was using like a lot of engineered food, like so goos. Um, and then it turned into more like, hey, I gotta be able to do this every day. So I would like mix in goos, and then like some high density calorie type mixes in my drinks. But then it turned into a lot of just like real food. Like, I'm a vegan, vegetarian. Mostly during the run across the country, I was a vegetarian eating eggs. So I'd eat a lot of eggs, plant based cheeses, Everything was like smeared in plant-based margarine or butter, olive oil, avocados, and then nut butters. I ate a lot of nut butters. And then it turned out like soda is really calorie dense. Everyone probably knows this, but I was also fueling with soda. So all those things help to make the nutrition work. And then pretty much anything that I could think of. So, but it turned out like if I was able to eat like the Matrix gruel that would have just filled me up, I would have done that, because I was just also like, you get sick of like chewing.
Yeah, I
So
was gonna
if I
say.
could have just not had to chew, that just would have been better. But a lot of times, like I would just eat it like slowly as I was walking, or like every hour or so, I would come in and have, I think most of the time they were less than 3 or 4 minutes, but I just have a little pit stop. My crew chief, Eric Bells, would, have something for me to eat. It could be pancakes. It could be egg sandwich. I ate an egg sandwich every day. Could be just an avocado wrap or salad, but you basically don't want to waste time chewing, and you don't want to waste your energy like eating stuff that's not calorie dense.
This
And
is one of the
then it also
challenges that I
depends
think
on what the
gets
weather's.
overlooked. I think it's a challenge that gets
Yeah.
overlooked a little bit. People just think about like the run or the sheer challenge of training for the run, and they forget like the consumption of calories, having, a crew with you to help support you, the hydration component, battling things like plantar fasciitis or, tendonitis of certain tissues. Trident Coffee is sponsoring this episode of the Invictus Mindset Podcast. My guys over at Trident taught me something really important this last year, that we are all a bundle of stories, both good and bad, and everything in between. At Trident, they're storytellers. All of their cold brews remind their customers that they are part of something bigger than themselves. They help create connections through symbology and storytelling that engage their customers on an emotional level, and this distinguishes them from other coffee brands. You can find Trident in Imperial Beach and in Coronado. They offer over 14 plus nitro cold brews along with dairy-free options. You can find the perfect brew and pair it with one of their treats from their keto bakery. All these options will allow you to support your health and fitness journey with Trident Coffee. They're more than just a coffee company. You can check them out over at tridentcoffee.com and use code Invictus20 for 20% off online and in tap rooms. Once again, that's tridentcoffee.com. Use code Invictus20 for 20% off online and in tap rooms. Take your coffee experience to the next level. Two important factors for us over at Invictus Mindset are true care and attention to detail. My friends over at RX Smart Gear have been bringing innovative fitness tools to the market since 2009. From their award-winning Evo speed ropes to their amazing gymnastics grips to their line of inflatable fitness equipment, they're constantly looking to problem solve within the fitness industry. They're always allowing us to have our gear work for us rather than against us. Hop on over to RX Smart Gear and use discount code Invictus Mindset to shop their latest cutting edge gear. Have your gear work with you and not against you. And then simultaneously, like being able to use the restroom, being able to maintain basic
Yeah,
bodily
man.
functions. How did you
Yeah, man.
manage all of that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's actually the biggest part of it. Like, and something like when I do a new challenge going forward that I'm curious about doing more kind of individual, because you basically are managing a team, and it's really awesome. Like I had the crew chief Eric Bells, and then I had my dad Dick Wardian, and another guy Henry that was helping, a friend of my dad's. And so you're not just managing yourself, but you're trying to make sure that everyone is doing their job and getting along. And it's hard when you're in a tight space to like make all that work. And then at the same time, I was still helping with my job as an international shipbroker. So you're dealing with like business stuff along with like family stuff and along with like your immediate like team. And so it became really really hard, but it was also so rewarding. Like I got to hang out with my dad. I haven't got to see him that long since I left home 25 years ago or so. So it was a really nice experience to reconnect with him, and then also get to know my crew chief really well, and then his friend Henry. And then I think the greatest part about this journey was the chance to connect with people along the way. So I really wanted it to feel like Forrest Gump. So if people were in the area and they wanted to come out and run with me, they could. Or, I had people drive like 13 hours to drop off pumpkin pie.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was so cool. It was like a woman that I had worked with like 15 years ago, and we're still friends. And so she was like, "Oh, I live in Houston. You're going to be in Missouri. Sure, I'll drive there." And she had heard that I wanted a pie, and people were just coming out to like, run a couple miles, and or some people ran the whole day with me or came back and ran multiple days. And it was just, that was what I was really looking forward to, and something that turned out to be even better than I expected was the chance to just connect with people along the way.
That's so cool, man. And the other major takeaway here is just the validation and the noticing of our world highlights the outcome and all the NFTs or the FKTs, all the world records, all those things. But the real value is really within the journey and the connections that you've made, the friendships that you made. You've mentioned Forrest Gump a few times. Like, what a great movie. And you've got the beard and everything. Like, I just
Yeah.
felt like running. And
Yep.
I don't know. I'm really excited to hear the in-between of some of your really incredible adventures, and the fact that you went 61 days going from one side of America to the other side of America is pretty special stuff. I'm sure you got to see lots of different parts of the country, embark
Yeah.
on some pretty impressive scenery. What were the weather conditions like, and how did you maintain like the health of like your feet and chafing and some of those adversarial things that you probably cross paths with?
Yeah, I mean, I think the temperature ranges were pretty extreme. So we started May 1st and I finished July 1st, and the first week or so was pretty hot. Between probably in the morning, it was 40 degrees Fahrenheit all the way up to like 90 degrees Fahrenheit. And then as we moved from California into Nevada, like we had to deal with like altitude. So as we're moving up in altitude, it's also getting a little bit colder. We had days where there was sideways rain and sleet, other days where it completely snowed. We had days where it was like 115 degrees in the desert. And so it was really awesome because over the course of my career, I've raced in, Antarctica, I've raced at the North Pole, I've raced across the Sahara Desert, and I got to use all those skills that I've built up over the years and really harness them to be able to like be like, I don't even know what the weather is. I don't care. Like I got, gloves if I need them. I got arm sleeves that'll knock the heat down, from when I ran Badwater across the, Death Valley. So I was like, I'm ready for whatever it is. Just tell me what the temperature is and I'll be ready. But you do have to take precautions, in the hotter weather. You have to really manage yourself. You have to not overdo it. You have to make sure you're fueling, and you got to make sure you're cooling. Some of the stupid like nitty gritty stuff is like I would put sunscreen on like every time I came into the truck. Like I never usually use as much sunscreen as I'd used during this run. We basically just had like a checklist. Like, did you eat? Did you go to the bathroom? Have you put on lube? Like I use like squirrel's nut butter. Like, do you have it with you in case, the car doesn't make it? All those little things. And then in the morning, it's like, oh, I got to wake up 45 minutes early to tape my feet because I got a little bit of hot spot because water ran down my leg and caused a little bit of an issue. And so like all those things are stuff that you have to navigate, but it's stuff that luckily I've learned over the course of the years of running and just these adventures that if you don't take care of the little things, they become big problems. And it's worth, a couple minutes of your time to avoid a problem. But that being said, like I still made mistakes. Like 2 days into the run, I forgot to put between my calf sleeve and my sock, I forgot to put some sunscreen, and I was burned for like 2 weeks, and it burned. It sucked. But like that's just one of the things like you got to deal with. And the other thing too was just like navigating my fear of traffic. I think that was one of the things that I knew would be a problem, and one of the things that had stopped me in the past from wanting to do these type of things. But I just decided like I want to finish this run more than I want to be afraid of traffic and people. And so it turned out like there's many more good people than bad people, but you still have, interactions that you wish you didn't have.
Yeah, totally. I appreciate you mentioning that. Navigating traffic is always a challenging thing, especially when you're running and, you're not in the dangerous vehicle, and, people are short on time, impatient, and, making decisions. I think I heard you tell a story on Rich Roll around certain trucks getting a little bit upset and leaving the fumes as they drove past you. And you definitely have navigated quite a few little challenges. The other thing I'm curious about, Mike, is how do you sneak in sleep? I know, like I've heard you say, like you don't really need more than 6 hours of sleep, and most people are always striving for 8+. And so, how did you become accustomed to needing a little bit less and being mentally, physically, and emotionally okay with it without having elevated forms of stress and getting short with your team while managing so many different things?
Well, I think, I feel like it's the sleep thing is something like I used one of the Aura rings like during the run. I haven't been using it since, but I used it to track my sleep because I was doing a study for MedStar Health. They're one of my partners. But one of the things I thought was interesting was the first week or so that I was only sleeping maybe 4 or 5 hours like I was normally doing in my regular kind of life. But as I built more and more distance into the run and I got more and more fatigued, that stretched to like 6 or 7 hours, and I just needed solid sleep. So I could tell, that I was needing it more and more. And I'd say one of the big things is that I took away from that is like it's a chance to recover and be ready for the next day. But if I didn't get it, I didn't stress about it. If I got a bad score on my Aura ring, I was like, well, I'm going to run anyhow. So, okay, like today should be a maybe easier day, but it's not. It's going to be a 50-mile day, no matter if I have good sleep or not. And so I think a lot of times we have so much data that can be useful, but sometimes you just got to know like, okay, this isn't going to be ideal, but I'm going to do it anyhow. And it'll probably end up working out.
Sounds like you got that Cam Hanes / David Goggins thing living between your ears around, it must be nice, to get those extra hours of sleep, but it really doesn't matter. Let's keep putting one foot in front of the other. You have a really resilient mindset. Taking us back to your upbringing, your childhood a little bit, what was that like? What was your exposure to movement? I know you dabble a little bit in CrossFit now. What kind of sports did you play? What was your upbringing kind of like that helped fortify this resilience and love for movement?
I was lucky. I grew up, I was born in West Virginia in a town called Morgantown. We lived in Fairmont until I was in 4th grade. Then we moved to Oakton, Virginia. And pretty quickly I picked up a sport called lacrosse. So I played lacrosse from 4th grade until junior year of college. I went to Michigan State and played lacrosse in Division I lacrosse there. So I was a highly, highly dedicated athlete as far as like, I wanted to be the best lacrosse player. I went to the weight room, even though I was small. I think the most I ever weighed was like 150 pounds. So I, 62, 63 kilos or something. And, I wasn't particularly strong. I think the most I've ever lifted was maybe 190, 200 pounds or something. So it's actually funny. Like this year, one of my goals was to lift 150 pounds, which I already did, and do 10 pull-ups. So it's like not even anything as opposed to like the CrossFit universe, but for me it was a big deal. And so like my movement was mostly lacrosse related, and I played pretty much year round. So I play in where we live, it's a spring sport, and then in the fall I would play men's league until it got to be box lacrosse season, and then I'd play box lacrosse, and then I'd play the next year. And so our team got to be really good, and like I was playing when I was 14 or 15, I was playing with like 18, 20, 30-year-old guys. So that was fun. And in education, you know, it's the guys that, you know, run 2 times up and down the field and they're just like dying. And you're just like, okay, come on, man. Like, I'm ready. I'm ready to keep going. So I got really into lacrosse and wanted to try to be the best that I could be in that. And then when I stopped playing lacrosse, I picked up running, and I had always had kind of a talent for running. I'd be like one of the first guys back from the team when they would make us do runs, and I really enjoyed it, but I wasn't focused on that. I wish I had, because I see how much fun our son Pierce is having in track and cross country, and all the people that I grew up running with, like over the years, like they always have such fond memories of those track meets and cross country. And I feel like I really missed out, because I probably could have done both, but I just thought those guys were funny in their little split shorts and like, you know, rail thin. And so I didn't.
Do you think maybe if you were running that much at a younger age that it would have led to burnout and you wouldn't love it as much as you do now?
I feel like for me, I don't know if I would have burned out, but I think I see that for sure in people, and I see them get disappointed that they're not running the time they were in high school or college or something. And then they're like, well, what's the point? I'm not going to do this anymore if I can't be as good as I used to be. And for me, I feel like starting later, you know, maybe I would have been able to do something more, but I've been really happy with how my career has been, and that it's lasted as long as it has, and that I still get the opportunity to kind of do these things. And yeah, I don't know if I would have, you know, had more injuries or burnt out had I started younger, but I'm happy that I found something that I really enjoy and that I have some talent in, and that I've got to explore that. But it's fun to see like some other, like a friend of mine, Dylan Bowman, he played lacrosse in college too, and he's like one of the top ultra runners now. And there's a guy named Patty O'Leary who's out in the Bay Area that's still a lacrosse player. So sometimes like when we're in some foreign country, like I took my lacrosse sticks to New Zealand and we threw around at a barbecue before we ran 100 miles. And so it's fun to kind of see like, yeah, it's really cool to like, you know, see that. And I've played lacrosse at Western States 100 miler, which is kind of like one of the biggest 100 milers in the world with those guys. So cool. Yeah. So it's been fun to like see other people from different backgrounds finding running. And, you know, if I would have found it earlier, maybe I would have been able to do more, but I feel like I've been able to accomplish a lot.
Totally. When did you know that you were going to become an ultra marathon runner? And did you have any like mentors or people that you aspired to be like in those beginning stages?
Oh man, yeah. So, yes, I didn't know I could be a marathon runner. Like I tell the story a lot, but my friend Vince Voisin took me to his mom's house for Easter, and his mom Vicky Voisin had run the Boston Marathon, and she had her little like space blanket and her medal, and I was like, I want to do that. That looks so cool. And so then she helped me, like she gave me like a program, and so I was like, okay, I'm going to run the Boston Marathon. And then I found out that you actually have to qualify for the Boston Marathon. And I was like, oh crap, now I got to run another marathon to qualify for the Boston Marathon. So I ran the Marine Corps figuring like if it goes really, really bad, like my parents are there, they can pick me up. It's right by our house in Arlington and DC, and, you know, no harm. And I'll try again. And it went well. I qualified for Boston. I went to Boston. I just got completely hooked. And so then I was like, I'm going to run all the big marathons, because this was in 1996 or 1997. I ran my first Boston. So then that same year I ran Chicago, New York City, Marine Corps again. And then I heard about a 50 miler and I was just like, what? You can't run 50 miles. Like, that is insane. And it was actually at a Fleet Feet in Springfield, Virginia. This guy, Scotty Mills, who actually you might know from the San Diego area, but he puts on the San Diego 100 miler.
Okay.
So he's moved out there since. But he was like, no, man, people run 50 miles. And I was just like, no way. Like that, like without stopping. And he was like, yeah, without stopping. And I was like, what? So I was like, well, I'm going to go to this race and win, because like, if you just take my marathon time and double it, like those guys are no way they're going to beat me. And of course, like it didn't work out like that. And I did not win. And I didn't even come close to winning, but I got to see this guy, Howard Nippard. And he was like a legend, and he smoked it, and he won the race. But I remember like running with that guy, and I was like, there's no way that guy can run that pace for the entire distance. Like, it's just impossible. Like, he's going so fast. He was like averaging like 6 minutes per mile for 50 miles. And I was just like,
Holy moly.
You can't do that. And turns out, yeah, you can. And it turns out like, 10 years after I did my first one, I ended up breaking his time and like myself. But like, just like to know that it's possible, I think is just so powerful. Like, it's probably like when you go to the gym and you like see somebody and they do something and you're like, no way. Like, that guy just like did a thruster like with that much weight. Like, how is that possible? And then you're like, well, if that guy can do it, I can probably do it too. And so like, I love that aspect of running, and like, it just becomes possible, right? It's like when you see it, you know that it's possible. It's kind of like, you probably know the story of the 4-minute mile. Like, no one could break it. They thought it was impossible. It was getting closer and closer and closer. And then this guy Bannister broke the record. And it was only because like this other guy, it's actually a great story. Like, I read a book about it, and a bunch of books actually were written about it, but this other guy just didn't get to the meet on time or something. And so like, they were kind of like jockeying back and forth, but then one guy broke it. And then of course, like the next week, like 2 guys broke it, because they were like, oh shit, it is possible. We're not going to like die. And it's kind of like the same with like the 2-hour marathon, or kind of any of those lofty things that people see. And they're just like, oh, you can't actually do that. And
I love that you pointed that out. It's just so interesting how we have these boxes that we place human potential into. And inevitably, I mean, science is what? It's tinkering. It's an experiment. It's constant trial and error, and, different forms of technology, modern day, helping fuel these endeavors, along with enhanced protocols and, learning from history and those that have done things before us. That's so cool that like to see the imagery as to how you've gotten into these longer races. This episode is brought to you by HVMN, Health via Modern Nutrition. They launched the world's first ketone drink in 2017, and then in 2022 launched the version 2 of their exogenous ketone product line called Ketone IQ. I found that incorporating ketones into my morning routine increased my daily focus and energy. The beauty of this product is that you can stack it. It doesn't even have to replace your morning routine. My morning routine looks like taking the dog on a walk, hitting my daily shot of Ketone IQ, hopping in the cold plunge, and then finishing it off with a nice Trident coffee while I soak up some morning sunlight. Try out some ketones for yourself by using the code INVICTUS for 20% off Ketone IQ. Ketones are a super efficient fuel for your brain that leaves you feeling energized and clear-headed. Give it a shot. I promise you won't regret it. Once again, use code INVICTUS for 20% off Ketone IQ. Move fast and break shit. This is one of the core values at LSKD, and something that we fully resonate with here at the Invictus Mindset Podcast. LSKD develops functional sportswear with a streetwear aesthetic that's on a mission to inspire you to chase the vibe through sport, fitness, and adventure. Through my experiences with LSKD products and their team members, I have found a brand that I can call home that keeps me performing at my highest level through fitness and business. I train daily in the rep shorts and love the versatility they offer, so I can go from training at the gym directly to meetings, client consults, running errands, or preparing for podcasts. The LSKB vibe has finally reached San Diego, and we want you to experience it too. Go to us.lskd.co to start shopping today. We want to inspire you to chase the vibe. What's the pacing structure been like? Because I can only imagine, I mean, you've got a 4:34 mile, and then you've got a 2:17 marathon and a few things that are incredible in between. I mean, a 1:06 half marathon, a 15:09 5K, a 30:23 10K. All of those take different types of pacing. And you mentioned that this gentleman was running 6-minute miles for 50 miles. How have you integrated certain strategies to optimize your pacing? Because you embark on lots of different challenges. Like, it's not like you just do marathons, you do all kinds of runs. So how has that maturity kind of been for you? And do you have like a pace coach and that holds you accountable? And also, man, just out of curiosity, just kind of knowing you so far, I mean, if somebody's running a 6-minute mile for 50, you're probably like, well, why can't I run a 5:45? Or
Yeah, well, I've tried. I feel like it's one of those things like people can tell you, what it feels like to run a 6-minute mile for 20 miles or 30 miles, but until you actually do it, it doesn't. It's the same thing. It's probably like with you like putting on a certain weight, and you're like, yeah, like. I have a feeling what that's going to feel like, but then you actually pick it up off the rack and you're like, ooh, okay, that's a whole different thing. So that's what I think is interesting. Like I've had people, I actually had a couple of people come out and run with me on the TransCon, and they said like, oh, my son is going to try to break the record. And I know the guy who has the record, and it's a guy named Pete Kostelnik, and he is such a badass. He averaged like 70 miles a day. I was averaging like 50 miles a day. So like 20 more miles than I was doing.
That's almost a marathon.
It's almost a marathon. And it's not just the 20 miles. It's like every 20 miles, that's like another 5 hours. So I was running 12 hours. So that'd be like 17 hours. And then you have to like eat. You have to like sleep. You have to like let your crew sleep. Like you have to like get food. You have to like go to wherever you're going to park. Like all these things. I'm like, you don't even know what you're saying. Like the people that like, so it's kind of like if someone came up to you and said like, I'm going to squat 500 pounds, and you'd be like, okay, probably not. Looking at you, maybe that's going to be hard. But like if they work towards it, like, yeah, that's a different thing. And so I feel like that's
the
same
famous
with, like,
statement for a novice of like, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes that's great, actually. Like I think at the beginning, like especially for me, like people would say like, hey, you're not supposed to run. And it's kind of what you were saying earlier about the box. It's like you run one spring marathon and maybe one fall marathon. And that's what the pros do. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. Like a lot of times they're getting appearance fees and they're not allowed to race more than one race because, name one of the big races like New York City Marathon is saying like, hey, we want to bring you in. You're going to get an appearance fee, like all these type of things. And if you do that, then you can't run Berlin, Chicago, and New York because you're not going to be in top shape for our race. But like if you're an amateur, like, or, you're different, like you could do all those races, and maybe like that's what I did. And I was like not locked into the dogma that says like, this is the way you have to do it. Or like you have to do a 5K before you do a marathon. Like I was just like, I want to run a marathon instead of like, I'm going to run a 5K. I'm going to run a 10K. I'm going to run a 21K. I'm going to run a half, and then all these things. And so the same with like pacing. It's like, I'm just going to go out with the fast guys and see what happens. And so it's kind of interesting. Like in the Western world, and you might know this, but like you're a 3 hour marathoner, and then you're a 2 hour 45 marathoner, and then you're a 2:15 marathoner or whatever. But the way they do it in other places, in particular, I think of Japan, it's like I'm a 2:10 marathoner for 10 miles, and then I'm a 2:10 marathoner for 12 miles, and then I'm a 2:10 marathoner for 20 miles. And so they're just going at it the opposite way. So they're just saying, like, I can run this pace for 10 miles now, and then 12, and then you just build up from there. So it's kind of like you're getting to the same place, but you're just doing it different ways. And I feel like that's what I did with a lot of the pacing is like, I was like, I'm going to just see how fast I can go. And then if I can't hold that pace, then I need to readdress and get stronger. And like most of the time, that's just like going to the track and doing the work that you need to do. And it's not hard. It's kind of like anything that you do, probably. It's like, if you follow this program, you're going to get where you want to go. It's just like what everyone wants is like a secret or like a hack. And like, there is no hack. Like the hack is
Yeah.
that that you just continuously show up and do the work.
Yeah, I love that you said that. It's interesting too because I mean, you look mathematically and it's like when you learn algebra, they tell you all the steps that you need to follow in order to get to the outcome. And then as you become a little bit better, you can kind of remove some of the steps. But there's this like narrative around high level athletics that you have to follow this specific progression. And if you don't, the likelihood for injury is higher, or you're doing it wrong, or
Right.
Joe Schmo, who has 100 case studies of success with this program, thinks that, you got to fit a square peg into a round hole. And that absolutely is going to work for Mike Wardian too. And I don't know, I really like your mindset around going against the grain a little bit and understanding principles, but then kind of, without really bastardizing it too much, you're kind of like, fuck that. I want to go faster. And I think that I can go faster. And if I fail, I don't really care. It's a data point. So that way I can build up to what I actually want to do. And I think that's really courageous.
Yeah, and I think that there's something good in failure too. It's because like like if I didn't have all those failures over the course of the years, like not putting on lube, not taping my feet, not pacing myself properly, like when you have those experiences and you make those mistakes, like they're seared into your mind. You're like, I'm walking in Athens for 15 hours because I forgot to put on lube because I was stupid and it rained, and all of a sudden now I'm chafed and bleeding everywhere. Like, yeah, you don't forget that, and you remember like, hey, like if you don't do this, you're going to suffer for it. And so I think having bad experiences, as long as they're, not hurting anyone else and, not causing you any serious damage, like I think that that's not a bad thing. And if you can learn from the experience and grow from it and become a better athlete, then yeah, it's just part of the process. Like everything doesn't go smoothly. Like even when I'm doing, like I post a lot of my exercises, and like I'm always so surprised like that they actually look like I know what I'm doing. But like if you would have seen the first set, like I was like falling off the bench or like couldn't hold the plank or like whatever it is. And but like I'm willing to put myself out there and not be perfect at something, because hopefully I'll get better. And I feel like a lot of people are so concerned with how they're going to look, or how it's going to seem to other people. And I think you just have to be willing to say like, I'm not great now, but if I keep working at this, I'm going to get better.
You're out there living, man. You're putting yourself out there and,
I'm
putting one
trying.
foot in front of the other. And it's cool to see, man. It's really, really cool to see. What I'm really curious about though, man, is how do you balance training with your job as a shipbroker, with your family, and with some of the nuances of the day-to-day life? How do you fit in some of these, longer things, and then also everything that comes with it, podcasts, appearances, sponsor calls, all the things that come with, being a high-level athlete like yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that has been challenging. I think it's one of the things that I love about the opportunities, and I usually say yes to like almost anything. And so like if it's a trip to Antarctica, or it's a speaking gig, or it's a community talk at a local store, like I try to be accessible. And I think for me, it's about prioritizing. I was actually listening to a podcast today that I thought was really interesting. It was a guy talking about board games and how like it teaches you a lot of life skills. And it was really interesting. It teaches like how to evaluate things, how to prioritize things, how to use your time wisely, and then how to win or lose. And it was like basically like all good games do those four things. And I was like, wow, that's really like how I try to like live my life, really, is like prioritizing the things I want to do, trying to honor all of my obligations, and trying to maximize my value proposition. And so like, yeah, that's what I want to do. And for me, it starts with like waking up early. I think that's the one, if there is a hack, like that's the biggest hack that I've found that works really well, is like no one really needs you at 4 o'clock in the morning. And my wife has snoring video of me to prove, like she doesn't want me there either, I guess. So I've seen a video of me snoring last night. But like, yeah, so waking up early, I think getting after your first, like, it depends how much work you're trying to accomplish, but like, I think finding people that support you, like I've been lucky to have a lot of sponsors over the years and currently that are willing to allow me to try to chase these dreams. And then having like accountability partners, like I'm sure you probably have that with your workouts and your gym, but like there's something about knowing that your buddy is also waking up at 4:30 in the morning to meet you up. Makes you like, oh, the covers don't feel as soft if you know that that you're going to stand somebody up. So like having people that are there for you and want to be part of your journey and train with you, like I think having training partners is super important. And if you don't have those, like also like we have such a great accountability system now with the social media and the internet. So you could just post crap and be like, I'm going to do this. And then everyone knows. And if you don't do that thing, like you got to face up to like what you said. And so like, I think, sometimes I'll put stuff out there and like, I won't make it, but like, at least I know that it's out there and that people have seen it and that I'm going to try to accomplish it. And so I think having accountability partners makes a big difference. And then I think this is something that you probably do too, but like having people that are, in your corner and wanting to help you. So like I try to bring as many people in as possible. So when I ran across the country, like I went to my clients or our clients and I was like, hey, I really want to do this thing. And you'd be surprised at how many people want to help you accomplish something awesome. And so like, that's what I thought was amazing. And it's not like just your immediate family and friends, but like, I really wanted to have buy-in from them, but then the people that are connected to you in other ways. And so like getting buy-in from everyone around you and then not being afraid to ask for help. Like, I think that that's something that I struggled with early. And I remember like going to my first race and being afraid to like ask the volunteer for water because I thought it would be like, putting them out, not realizing that the whole reason that person is there is because they want to help people. And like, it's also something that I take great pleasure in helping other people. So I should know other people, get a value out of helping me. And so like not being afraid to ask for something that you need or think that can help you on your journey.
I'm really stoked that you shared that. There's that famous statement of like, as long as you help others, you'll always be okay. And
oh,
I
that's
know
really awesome. I didn't know that statement. Oh, that's good to know.
It's kind of a cool one, right? Like, and you do that naturally with pacing visually impaired athletes and helping people in the adaptive community. Some cool things that you've taken part in. What's that experience been kind of like, and how'd you get into it? LMNT, pronounced element, is a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything you need and nothing you don't. That means a science-backed electrolyte ratio with none of the junk. No sugar, no coloring, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, and most importantly, no BS. Whether it's after a long workout, hot yoga, or an intense sauna and ice session, I've been using Element to keep me hydrated and replenishing all of my lost electrolytes. So many of us wake up chronically fatigued, and the antidote to this is salt water. Salt has previously been blamed for blood pressure issues, but new research shows that replenishing salt and electrolytes can lead to more energy, no headaches, a clear mind, and enhanced focus. Use the link drinklmnt.com/invictusmindset to make any purchase of Element, and you will receive a free sample pack with all of the Element flavors. Once again, that's drinklmnt.com/invictusmindset.
Oh my gosh, that has been one of the best experiences I've ever had, and I highly recommend it for anyone that's like ever thought of it. It's not as hard as you think. So I think that's like, for me, that was one of the biggest like limiting factors, is like, oh man, I'm gonna have to like learn all these things. Basically, if like you can talk and you can run, you can guide anyone, because the people that you're guiding are so good at, they'll just train you on the fly, and they'll just tell you if you suck. They'll be like, hey, yo, you're like, I don't like it when you do this. Go to my left side and tell me like what's going on. And so, especially if you're doing like a visually impaired athlete, like they have navigated the world so much without sight that they can basically chaperone you around, and you're their eyes, but they're basically just, you're just like a automaton. Like they're telling you what they need and how to help them. And so I think if you're just open to the experience, like you'll get so much more out of it than you're putting into it. And it's just unbelievable to help other people achieve their dreams and goals. And so like, it's, for me, it's been one of the best things ever. And I got into it. I think my friend Scott Jurek, I don't know if you know him. He's a pretty famous ultra runner. He's won like Western States like 7 times. And I saw him doing some guiding, and I was like, oh man, I want to do that sometime. And then someone reached out to me because I had mentioned it. And then I paced a visually impaired athlete named Chaz Davis, who's really fast. He's like a 2:31 marathon runner. And so the problem with like that is, yeah, he's an Olympian, like he's a badass and super cool. But like the problem with Chaz is like, he's so fast that like most people that are running that fast don't want to guide anyone, because they're like, hey, I'm running like 2:30. I have a chance to like win the race or like be top 20 or whatever. I'm not going to like give up my chance to do really well to help someone else. And I completely understand that. It's like, to be in that shape is really tough. And but I figured like, hey, this guy needs some help, and so I'm willing to help him a little bit. And so I paced Chaz. I had an amazing experience. From there, I met another guy named Brian Reynolds, who's a double amputee. He was going for a world record for sub 3 hours as a double amputee. So I paced him. He was a great guy. I had an amazing experience. And then from there, I've just continued to pace people. So I paced Brian.
It's probably such a gift in perspective as well, because, you know, a visually impaired athlete, you know, is communicating way differently than, you know, a double amputee, and they probably need and want different things. And so it gives you this humbling empathy around understanding the navigation of stress, not to mention your own personal stress of trying to breathe and regulate your own bodily functions while trying to maintain a relatively fast pace. That can't be easy. I mean, there's a lot of skill that goes into that, and also just shows your high level of capacity to help while simultaneously running a sub 3 hour marathon.
Yeah. Well, and I think what's awesome about it too is like, I have a pretty, like you said, like I have the beard and the long ponytail, and like, so people recognize me a little bit, especially at the bigger races. And so what's nice is like when I'm guiding someone, we get a little bit of a bubble around us because people are just cognizant. They're like, oh, that guy. And then they like let us have a little more space. So that's been really nice too. But it's also been awesome just to see how many people in the community will just look out for everyone else. So like runners in particular, I feel like do a really good job of that. But when we're guiding, like there's always just a really good group. Like I've guided a guy named Francesco for Achilles at the New York City Marathon, and so many people came up and were cheering him on and just like trying to make space for us, and it was just awesome. And so like I think the chance for people to see athletes of all backgrounds and abilities chase their dreams is something that is amazing. And if you could be a small part of that, it's literally life changing. Like because without guys, they can't do the race even if they're prepared and trained for it. So like they just need somebody to be there with them. So yeah, I'm doing it again in Boston, and I'm helping a guy that's a 250 marathon runner. So we're going to be going sub 3 hopefully, and it'll be really fun to connect with him and help him kind of chase his dreams.
From your experience, what does the training look like for those guys? Because they obviously don't have access to someone like you at all times. I'm sure they're having to do paced runs occasionally. There's weather conditions. They might be on a treadmill occasionally.
Yep.
What from your knowledge and experience, what does the training look like for them to even get into the category of a sub 3 marathon?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty typical. It's just running training. So they're just doing it without sight, though, which just makes it more challenging. So a lot of times they have somebody in the community that can run with them. My friend Chaz just got a dog. So like he's got a dog that he can run with, but he also runs a lot on the treadmill, which is nice because you just set the treadmill and then the pace that you got to do, and then you can add the hills and that kind of stuff. But a lot of times it's like just a meetup with a person. So they have like a training run, and then they're just doing the same thing that any marathon or runner is doing. So tempo runs, long runs, back-to-back runs, speed work, all those things, especially if you're going to be trying to run sub 3 hours. Like that's the nice thing is like running doesn't care. It doesn't care who you are or like what your abilities or limitations are. It's like you either do the work and get the time, or you don't. Like the clock doesn't say like, well, because you have these limitations, like you're getting a better time or a worse time. It's just the time is the time. And that's what I love about running is like, there's no way around it. It's like you either do the work and get the results or you don't.
It's super fair. I believe in the fitness space, Henry Rollins wrote a really cool article titled "The Iron Never Lies." You've probably maybe seen that somewhere. And he's like,
I have
when
not. No.
It's kind of the preface about it is like you can go out into the world and people can tell you you're God's gift to the world or that you're a complete bastard. But at the end of the day, 200 pounds is always 200 pounds.
Yes.
And that's kind of what I'm hearing from you. It's like you could have limitations. You could have had poor sleep, a stressful email, a stressful interaction with whoever. But at the end of the day, the clock's still going to be the clock and running's still going to be running.
Yeah. And that's what I think is great. I mean, the adaptive athletes and the visually impaired athletes or the athletes that are wheelchair athletes, like they're all doing the work. Like that's what's so awesome. Like you don't just get to go, like you have to like qualify, you have to do all the work. Like, so they deserve to be there as much as anyone else. And yeah, it's just awesome to see. And what's even cooler is they're competitive amongst themselves too. It'd be like, oh, there's that guy, like, I can't believe like, his blades are longer than my blades, or he's got the newer blades. And it's just like people like talking about like shoes or whatever, it's just like, wow, he's got the new like tires for his handicap, like, wheelchair. Like, I can't believe he got those before time. And like, so it's like all the same stuff that like everyone else is talking about. It's just different stuff, but it's all the same.
Everybody's
Like
seeking that edge.
Well, and everyone's competitive and everyone's driven, and it's just awesome to be a part of, and just to get to see that aspect of the race too. Because I've done a lot of these races so many different ways. Like when I first started, like I said, I wasn't an elite runner. I was just a regular runner that wanted to qualify for Boston, and then, worked up all the way to being like in the pro division. And then now I'm like running with people that are at the very top of the para division or the visually impaired division. And so like it's really cool to see like there's so many different races going on in each race. Like, and it's the same as like when you're in a age group world championship or something. Like the first 40-year-old guy doesn't care that he's in 20th place as long as he's in front of the guy that's the second, 40 to 45-year-old guy, or the first woman. And so that's what's awesome about running, is you can always prioritize whatever you're interested in.
Yeah, that's rad, man. During the pandemic, you took part in these backyard ultras.
I did, yeah.
What was that like? And can you define that for our listeners?
Yeah, for the people that don't know what a backyard ultra is, it used to be called like a last man standing, but I think it's actually better like last person standing type event, because a lot of the ladies just kick ass in these races. So like to say last man standing is kind of not true. But it's an interesting concept. So there's, again, this guy, Lazarus Lake, who, I don't know if any of your audience followed the Barkley marathons this last week, but it's this race in Tennessee where you have to like run around in the woods and find books. And it's like 100 miles, but it's more like 130 miles with like, I don't know, 60,000 feet of elevation gain and bad weather and all this stuff. But he also created this other race, which is the Backyard Ultra. And so the Backyard Ultra it's kind of funny. Like supposedly it started like around his backyard in his house in like Tennessee, and it's 4.1667 miles per an hour. And you have 1 hour to complete that 4.667 miles. And then basically every 24 hours, you do 100 miles. So if you finish the loop, the 4 miles in 30 minutes, then you have 30 minutes to rest. If you finish in 50 minutes, you have 10 minutes to rest. If you finish in 61 minutes, you don't get to start again. So like, yeah, you either, you can run the lap as fast as you want, but then you have to start again on the next hour. So if like anyone in your audience ever played like the drinking game, like Century Club, where every minute you drink like a shot of beer until everyone can't drink it anymore, that's the same idea, except with running. And instead of like one shot of beer, it's like 4.167 miles or whatever.
In our community, we have EMOMs, so every minute on the minute for a certain duration or time domain. And
yes,
so
exactly,
our community will be very familiar with this version of training. So it's 4.1667 miles on the hour. And I believe you mentioned within a 24-hour period, it adds up to 100 miles within 24 hours.
Yeah, so every 24 hours, you do 100 miles. So during the quarantine, they did a virtual one where you had to check in on your laptop. So you basically left your laptop on, and every hour you would have to check in when you finished, and then you had to start the next hour on the starting hand. So if it started at like 9 o'clock at night, you'd check in at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and you just keep going. So I did that. Ended up signing up for the race because my friend Maggie Guterall, who had won like a regular backyard ultra, said like, "Hey, you'd be good at this." And I was like, "Yeah, man, I would love to do this sometime." And like, but I was always like going somewhere or racing something else, and I never kind of focused on this. And so during quarantine, there was nothing going on, and I was like, "Well, I'm getting ready to run across the country, so like this would be a good training run. I'll do like 100 miles and see how it goes, or whatever. I don't know how it's gonna go." So I literally like walked out with like a box of goose, put it down like next to a fire hydrant that all the dogs pee on in my neighborhood, and I just ran around like a 0.4 mile loop. So I just did that like 10, 12 times every hour, and then I just did that for like 24 hours. But my wife like looked at Maggie's setup, and she had like coolers and heaters and space blankets and like a canopy. She's like, "Dude, what are you doing? Like, you're going to get crushed." So like she coordinated all the neighbors. They like made a little aid station for me. Oh, the other thing I should say is like once you leave to start the loop, you can't take aid from anyone else. So you can't like, go get more food or drink. So you have to decide what you're going to use. And then if you want to go to the bathroom, that counts as part of your lap, or if you want to sleep or anything like that. So you have to like plan kind of everything out. So I ended up not sleeping, and I ended up, it was pretty cool. Like it went from like 2,000 people to like 1,000 people. And then by the time we got to like 100 miles in the first 24 hours, I think there was a couple hundred people left. And it was cool because it was going on all around the world. So like there was a woman running in her sauna in like Sweden. There's
In her
people,
sauna?
yeah, like she was running from her sauna on like a frozen lake. There were people like running in like Hong Kong in like restaurants, like around like chairs. I was running around like my little block in the US. Some people were running on their treadmill because they were in a place where you couldn't go outside. So it was really kind of this unique like time capsule, at the beginning of the pandemic when in April of 2020. So like no one really knew what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And it ended up coming down to like 3 people, and then I was still in it. And then it came down to me and this guy in the Czech Republic. And we went back and forth for like 16 hours, and I ended up winning in 63 hours. I think I ran like 260 some miles.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Did you guys
like,
have communication with each other? Was there banter back and forth? Like, hey man,
no,
run slower on this
yeah,
like 4 miles.
yeah, not really. Like there was definitely a lot of banter around the world, but yeah, he was running on his treadmill in the basement, and I was kind of running around the outside in the in my neighborhood, so just kind of around the block. So
Little did you know that 63-ish miles was going to prepare you to run from California to Delaware, roughly 61, 62 days. Kind of
no,
impressive to see.
I knew I was hoping that it would, and it definitely helped me get ready for that for sure.
What was the camaraderie and the connection with your neighbors? Like were
Oh
there
my God, it
bits
was
where they're like, oh
awesome.
my gosh, this guy's crazy? Or were they like turning it into a production with music and everybody's cheering you on? I mean, it was probably like a huge glimpse of hope at a time of tremendous fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
For sure, dude. It was awesome. It was like one of the coolest experiences I've ever had in my life. And it was like I got to meet all kinds of neighbors I didn't even know existed. Like I had people coming and running like around the neighborhood. Like now there's like a Strava segment called like the Wardian Loop, where people just come and visit our neighborhood to like run the loop. Like it was amazing. But yeah, there was like food and bands and friends and like movie screens put up so that you could like watch it all going on. It was
That's epic.
awesome. Like people were making smoothies for me. Like people were like coming out and supporting in all different ways. It was one of the most incredible experiences ever, and really brought our community together,
Mm-hmm.
which was really cool because everyone was freaked out until that point. Like they didn't know if you could be close to each other or whatever. And still, even after that, it kind of went back to being really isolated. So for that like brief 63 hours, we were all together, which was awesome.
That's so epic, man. And once again, it's the in between. Yes, the outcome was dope, but it's like who you met, the stories, the
Yeah.
memories, your wife coming out and realizing like, hey, we need to upgrade your recovery station here and make this more of a production. That's
Well,
super epic to see everybody come together and your support crew.
yeah, well, and she even saved the day more than once. So not just with the aid station, but like I think around 183 miles. Like that before that was kind of my longest run continuously. I ran this big FKT called the C&O Canal. It goes from Georgetown to like Hagerstown in Maryland. So it's all like kind of crushed gravel, and I broke a record from like the 70s. But I ran like 36 hours and 84 miles or so. And until that point, that was kind of my longest continuous run. Like I'd done like longer runs, but like, where you sleep, or like I ran across Israel and something like that. But like straight through, this was kind of my longest run. And so I got to that point during the Quarantine Backyard Ultra, and I was like the middle of the night. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning, kind of when everyone, I don't know if you ever done any 24-hour runs or anything, but that's kind of like the cruxy part. Like it's like past where it's like cool to be up anymore, but it's still far enough from like morning where it's like kind of just dead zone. And I was really struggling, and like I was like, I think I'm done. My wife's like, what? You're gonna quit now? And so Jennifer was like, man, you can't quit. And I was like, why? Like I've already, this is like the longest I've ever run. I'm good. And she's like, man. And I was like, you guys have been up for a long time. I was trying to make it about them, like how I was like, you know, like I'm quitting because, you know, it'll be better for everyone. And she's like, man, I don't care. I'll stay up. Like, you can't quit because of that. Like, she's like, are you hurt? I was like, no. And then like, do you just not want to do it anymore? Yeah, pretty much. She's like, that's not a good enough reason. And I was like, you're right. That's not. And
That's
then I just,
super cool. The mind just
yeah,
plays these powerful tricks sometimes in the justification of
yeah,
why we want to do certain things. And it's so great that your wife was there and you had your team there to kind of help talk you through some of those bouts and, you know, feelings and emotions are things that like we don't always have to believe them. Sometimes they're like cars
yeah.
passing through a tunnel, or it's like you're just a moment in time. I just need to let you pass.
Yes, 100%. I think that that's something that a lot of people don't realize, and a lot of times, like you're not going to feel bad forever. There's actually a funny quote that you were saying, like people I looked up to in the ultra community. There's this guy David Horton. He's like super famous. Like he finished the Barkley marathons. He like had the record on the Appalachian Trail. But he has a funny quote. It's like it can't always get worse,
Mm.
and it's like one of my favorite quotes because it's so true. It's like, you know, and somebody else told me, I think it might be Carl Meltzer, another friend of mine. He's like, never decide you're going to quit a race while you're going uphill. And I was like, oh, that's a good that's a
That's
good
a
one.
really good one.
But it's probably
I mean,
like
that's
some
a
of those.
metaphorical analogy for so many things. Never decide you're going to quit a race while going uphill.
Yeah, it's like, man, there's like if you're like on flat and you're like struggling or you're really injured, like okay, maybe, but like yeah, don't quit while you're in the worst possible position.
That's so cool, man. Well, one
Yeah.
of the things that you're really famous for is 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days. How did that challenge land on your lap? And what was that experience like? I mean, I don't even know the totality of 26.2 times 7, but that's a lot of mileage in a very short amount of time. Probably more mileage than I've done in my entire life.
Yeah, so it turns out it's like I think around 183 miles. And it it's weird. It's a funny story in that one of the things I'm afraid of or used to be afraid of was really cold weather. Like I never enjoyed snow or cold, which is funny because I went to Michigan State and that was like a big mistake as far as like weather. But I did learn like how to kind of navigate, you know, cold, but I didn't enjoy it. So in I think 2010, I met a guy named Richard Donovan at the 50K World Championships in Galway, and he was telling me that he puts on a race at the North Pole, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. But like, I'll never do that. That's something like I don't want to. I don't like cold. Like that's something I don't think I'm ever going to do. But then he said, hey, if you ever want to do it, let me know. And so a couple years later, I was like, hey, I think I want to try to, because I was just limiting myself in that, like I was saying, I'm not going to do any races that are cold or kind of too extreme. And but I had done some like races across the desert and I'd done really well. Um, like a race called Marathon des Sables where you're like carrying your food and kit for a week across the Sahara Desert. And I was like, well, if I can do that extreme, like I should try the cold extreme. And so I decided to apply for the 2014 North Pole Marathon that Richard and his team put on. And I ended up winning the race and did really well. And it got a little frostbite, but it wasn't as bad as I thought. Like the frostbite I got, like I know people get it like really, really bad. I didn't really get it that bad. But it like opened up my mind to the thing. But while I was there, Richard said like, hey, I have this idea for 7 marathons in 7 days on 7 continents. And I was like, dude, I want to do that. Yes. And then he told me how much it cost. And he was like, it's going to be like $35,000. And I was like, oh crap. Okay. Well, I'm going to figure out how I can afford that someday. So it took me from 2014 to 2017. Um, and then I just decided to go for it. And it was one of the best decisions I ever made. But I remember freaking out like when I wrote the check for like the entrance fee, being like, oh crap, like I don't know how this is gonna turn out.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's like anything. Like I didn't have a plan B, I just had a plan A, and I was like, I'm gonna make this work. And it turned out like I was lucky enough to win the race and have the experience. But it was one of the most magnificent journeys ever, and the chance to connect with so many cool people. Like usually it's about 50 people. Just for like the people in your audience that don't know about it, it's called the World Marathon Challenge. It's 7 marathons of 26.2 miles in 7 consecutive days. So I think it's 168 hours on 7 continents. I've actually done it twice now. So the first time I did it in 2017, we did most of the time you start in Antarctica. So we flew from a place called Punta Arenas, which is in Chile, to Antarctica, ran a marathon, flew back to Punta Arenas, ran a marathon. From there, flew to Miami, ran a marathon, flew to Madrid, ran a marathon, flew to Marrakesh in Morocco, ran a marathon, then flew to Dubai, ran a marathon, and then flew to Sydney and finished. So that was
Those aren't short flights, man. Like, how did you maintain
no, they are not.
the inflammatory markers down in your headspace and controlling the anxiety of getting yourself up to complete such a hefty craft in such a short window? This episode is brought to you by Mush. My friends over at Mush created an incredibly cool product of ready-to-eat overnight oats. And for those of you that listen to the podcast often, you know simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And Mush has done just that, as their products have no more than 7 clean ingredients that are dairy-free, gluten-free, with no added sugar. Mush started right here at Invictus, as they had a vision to create convenient, healthy, and clean nutrition. And this landed them on Shark Tank, where the famous Mark Cuban invested in them. Now they're found in retailers all over the country, including Costco, Sprouts, Target, and Whole Foods. Check out my friends over at www.eatmush.com.
It's lucky because it's basically, I'd done a lot of stage racing, or a number of stage races. Like I said, Marathon des Sables. I've done a really cool race in Costa Rica called the Coastal Challenge. So I was familiar with what it takes to do back-to-back racing. And then I've known for, like, I did a marathon in Sacramento for rock and roll. And then later that same day ran like the Vegas rock and roll marathon. So like I ran like the Olympic trials, and then the next day, like the Houston marathon, so like I've done like a lot of these kind of back-to-back extreme runs. So I was pretty familiar with like how my body would feel after the run, and then kind of refueling and recovering between. And that's something I've been known for in the past, is like quick recovery. So I wasn't really concerned about that. More it's navigating the sleeping, which again, like I was lucky, I don't really need to sleep that much. So that was helpful. But mostly it was like trying to stay fueled as a vegetarian, trying to make sure that, like, I tried to lose my passport, like, you know, just like the normal, like, travel stuff, like, and then just staying healthy, like, especially when you're on a plane with like 50 other people, and like one person gets a cough. It's kind of like any team sport you've been on, like all of a sudden, like, oh, if you have a headache, like 10 people have the same headache. And so like just navigating that. But yeah, for the most part, it's pretty straightforward. It's just like a stage race. You just run, start your recovery as soon as possible, and then try to get as much sleep as you can, and get ready for the next race. And so that's basically what you do, and then hope that you don't get sick along the way.
What made you want to switch over to being a vegetarian? What was kind of the cognizant decision made there? And does that pose challenges with your recovery and with access to certain fuels?
Well, I mean, it poses issues in that it's hard to find food everywhere, especially in some countries like where you're like, oh, it's going to be super easy, like France, and then they're like, yeah, we just don't do that. In especially not in like Paris, like places like that, like you can find what you need, but like if you're in a little French village and they're like, you don't eat cheese, what are you crazy or butter? And you're like, yeah, no. So it just becomes a little bit more challenging. But like the great thing is like I've been a vegetarian since the kind of early 90s. So like the amount of options that there are now compared to like when I first started and it was just like garden burger is just shockingly awesome. And then just to like have it be part of the public consciousness now rather than like what is that and like is that even a thing? So I stopped eating red meat in high school, stopped eating chicken in college, and then stopped eating fish around that same time, and then stopped eating kind of dairy maybe 15 years ago now. And so it's just been a steady progression. I've gone all the way to vegan, kind of where I am right now. Um, and then for many, many years, I was eating eggs as a source of protein, but nothing else. So kind of, yeah. So it's been a progression and it's not fixed. And I think so many people think like, oh, once you go vegetarian, you can't like go back to eating meat or whatever. But um, it's really up to you, like what you want to do. It's your body and what you put into it. And for me, I've noticed that it really helps me with recovery and to stay healthy and feel good. And so that's kind of how I got here. And I plan to, be this way as long as I can, as long as I feel good.
Very cool, man. What are some of the other recovery protocols that you integrate? Do you use Normatec boots or massage guns? Do you ever use like IV therapy to try to enhance your hydration? What are some of the secret sauces that you integrate into the day to day of Mike Wardian to keep performing at such a high level?
Well, it's funny. Like we loaned our massage gun out to a friend who did his first half marathon, and our son was so mad. So it's been funny. Like so, I do use the I think it's the Hypervolt. I
Yeah.
think that's a really great tool. Um, I I stick sometimes, do some foam rolling, but a lot of times it's just like normal stretching and walking. Like I believe more in active recovery. So I think a lot of people, when they finish an event, they stop doing any kind of recovery at all, or movement. And so I tend to try to stay active after a big event or a race or even just a training session. I don't do like cold plunges very regularly at all. Um, a lot of times, if I'll sprain my ankle or whatever, I'll just let it heal naturally uh, rather than putting ice on it, which I think is counterintuitive to a lot of people. Like, just let the blood flow kind of do its thing. I feel the same with like recovery in general. I try to eat really quickly after if I can, if I have a stomach for it. Like sometimes if you've been eating for 24 hours, like the last thing you want to do is put more food in. And a lot of times I recovery, like there's a place by me called South Block where they have like smoothies and that kind of stuff. But that's kind of what I crave is like those, fresh pressed, cold pressed juices. Yeah, that kind of stuff. And then back to like the normal food that I tend to eat is like almond butter. And then Goo has some good products also that I use.
How's your hydration? Do you ever come toe to toe with cramping or anything like that?
It depends on the day. It's actually, I feel like I'm just plugging a lot of sponsors, but I work with a company called Nix, and they have like a pretty cool hydration like patch that you can put on. It's kind of like I don't know if
Oh,
you've
that's
seen those
cool.
continuous glucose monitors, but the
Yeah,
Nix
I've seen them.
patch is pretty cool. It'll tell you like if you're dehydrated or not. But I try to like I have like a little bottle that I use trying to drink through this.
Nice.
But
So
a
it
lot of
holds you
times like I
accountable a
just
little bit.
yeah, exactly. So this one's pretty cool too. Like they have another one too that's like morning, like afternoon, night or whatever. But yeah, having something like that is really nice. But I don't usually get cramping. And like I've trained myself too to go a long time without water, which I think is helpful, especially in training. Just to know that like, hey, I can make it 20 miles or 25 miles without anything. A lot of times, like I run with like I run for Nathan, so I'll have like a hydration vest on, and then I'll have like water or some kind of electrolyte drink. A lot of times it's like a Roctane or something in these pouches, and if I need it, it's there. But I don't. If I don't in training, I won't use it. But during the race, like I'm very, very diligent. Like I'll set like an alarm on my watch and be like, this is every 30 minutes, like it'll ring. And if I haven't taken something, then I know to take something. And if I have, then okay, cool. So that's like a nice feature. Like
That's
just
super
like,
cool. I like just knowing the protocols. I know for myself, like I'm typically a big cramper, like anything over 16 miles. And
oh,
so
really? Okay.
yeah, I mean, just a big sweater and,
Yeah.
don't train at the same capacity as you. And so I use LMNT, the Element hydration beverage that's very high in sodium, has a little bit of
Yep.
magnesium in there as
Yep.
well. And those packets seem to work pretty well for our community as well.
Yep.
My next question for you, man, is how did you find CrossFit? I think you
Oh
mentioned you
my
did like a
gosh,
Spartan
dude.
type race and like, how'd you find it and how are you using it as a tool to support your running?
Oh my gosh, dude. So it's awesome. I have to give a big shout out to my wife again, Jennifer. So she basically set me up on a play date with this guy, Tom Merhofer. So Tom and I both worked out, but like not together. And then the pandemic came, and my wife's like really good friends with Tom's wife, Lee, and was like, hey, Lee thinks Tom and you would be a good fit for like workout partners. And I'm sure you probably get this a lot from people. And like a lot of times when people set you up with a workout partner, you're like, okay, but like they don't really work out like I work out, or I don't think that they're really at the same level, or I maybe you just I'm not gonna like that person or whatever. But like I'm like okay, fine, like I'll go check it out and see what it's all about. And I found like one of my best friends in the world, man. Like I love the guy. Like he's so awesome. Like he's so just such a good dude. And so we just like hit it off right away. I was like dragging my feet to go over and meet him. And then I was like, dude, the guy gets after it. Like he's like putting up weight and like throwing it around and like teaching me all the stuff. But I had no idea. Like no, like I'd seen CrossFit on TV and stuff, and like it still like blows my mind because like I do, like I said, like my bench is like 150, right? So like I do the weights, but like the weights that you guys are actually doing like for real is like just like when you were like, oh, you run like a 4 minute mile, like that's fast or whatever. But like the amount of movement and pull-ups and like kipping and all that stuff, like I didn't know any of that existed. Like I did like the old school like weight training in school. It'd be like bench, squat, bench again, curl for the girls, tricep extensions, leg press, and then
And just
you're
know
done.
all that stuff is still valuable. And
No,
I
no,
think
no, it totally is. Yeah.
it's super valuable. And I think what's cool is like CrossFit's done a really cool job just kind of redefining fitness, utilizing a combination of different fitness ingredients with, powerlifting, as you just mentioned, some of the gymnastic skills, the monostructural things like running, rowing, burpees, double unders, jumping rope.
Yeah.
Then they pulled in Olympic weightlifting, which, is a cool little mix because traditionally, since we chatted briefly about going against the grain, everybody thought Olympic weightlifting, you can't put that into capacity. It needs to be like a concentrated focus with big rest intervals in between. And I don't know, it's just kind of cool to see how CrossFit's integrated themselves within the fitness modalities, but more importantly, how people like yourself and all kinds of other professional athletes are using CrossFit as a tool to help supplement some of their training. And
Yeah.
have you noticed, any sort of strength gains or structural integrity of your ankles, knees, hips, shoulders, and things improving on your longer runs because of using CrossFit?
Oh my God, yes. So I'd say one of the biggest things is just being strong at the end of a race, like maintaining posture, like not like even noticing like I have a sack on, like I'll have like my Nathan bag full of like water and backpack and space blanket and like pills and lube and whatever. And it's just like, yeah, whatever. It's on there. But like it's not like causing me any discomfort at all, just because like my arms are strong, my shoulders are stronger, like my core is like a lot stronger. And also I think the mentality is like getting through that last rep or whatever, just makes you hard. Like it just makes you hard. Like, so like, I feel like I love that part of it. And I did like, weightlifting and stuff when I was, playing lacrosse, but I'd gotten away from it. So like just finding it again and then just having those games is just so cool. But as far as like, I don't think it's made me that much faster at the shorter stuff, but the longer stuff for sure. Like just being able to maintain form and fitness and then pace and then the mentality. Yeah, 100%.
That's great, man. And
Yeah,
obviously you
it's
have a
been
great
awesome.
friend now that you get to connect with each day.
Oh my
And
God, so cool. Yeah.
yeah, the community aspect's dope, man. What's next for Mike Wardian? What you got on the agenda for the rest of the year?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think I've got a pacing duty at the Boston Marathon this weekend. I'm thinking I might run a marathon. I got to see if I can get into one, like a local one. Next weekend, I'm racing a half marathon in Florence, Italy. So I'm really excited about racing overseas for my first kind of international race in a while. That'll be fun. I've got the Comrades Ultra Marathon, which is funny because it's called a marathon, but it's really like 89 kilometers, which is about 56 miles. This year, it's kind of a cool race. It alternates direction. So it goes uphill from Durban to Peter Maritzburg some years, and then from Peter Maritzburg to Durban, which is on the coast of South Africa. So it's like a South African port city, actually. So I send a lot of food there, actually, for my real job. So this year it's a down race, which doesn't mean anything except you get the hills. It's really hilly. It's like 5,000 or 6,000 feet of elevation gain over the course of 56 miles. So you are getting a lot of hills. They're just kind of at the beginning rather than the end, because you're running through I think it's called the Valley of 1,000 Hills, which when the first time I went there, I didn't realize that. And I was like, oh, this is really hilly for a road race. So it's a road race in South Africa. That'll be really amazing. And then I'm going to go visit, I raised a bunch of money last year with a charity called World Vision USA. So I'm going to go visit some of the World Vision is the largest provider of clean water that's non-governmental in the world. So we're going to go visit some water projects in Africa after the Comrades Marathon. So I'm really looking forward to that and getting some running in Ethiopia and I think Kenya. And then from there, going to a race called the Hard Rock 100 Miler, which is one of the most difficult 100 milers in the world. It's in Silverton, Colorado, in the San Juan Mountains. It's about 102 or 3 miles. I don't know, maybe a little more, and about 30,000 feet of elevation gain. With the
That's a lot.
majority of the race over 10,000 feet. So for me, coming from DC sea level, or from San Diego, it's it's a big jump in elevation. So
Oh
it's
yeah.
always a challenge. And
How
then
do you
trying to
navigate
plan.
some of the altitude? Does that hit you pretty hard? And have you ever had altitude sickness?
So it does hit me very hard. And the last time I did it, which was 2 years ago, like I almost didn't make it. Like if I could have like had my mom come and pull me off the mountain, I would have totally done that. Like hit the easy button and been like, "Mom, come and get me. I'm all
Totally.
done." Like I would have done that. But I was like 8 miles from one aid station and 8 miles from the other aid station, like on my hands and knees, climbing up this 14,000 foot peak called Handy's Peak.
Hmm.
And I was like, I got to keep going. And people are like literally stepping over me on the trail. And I was like, oh
Oh
God,
man.
this is embarrassing and not my best day. But again, like I was lucky. I had a really great crew that got me back on track. And like they're like, why don't you just sit at the aid station until you feel better? So I was there for like a good hour and 10 minutes or something, trying to get my mind right, and then got back out and, ended up doing pretty well. But, it's
And a
one of those
pretty cool
things.
story around resilience for sure.
Yeah, well, and just having the right team in place to be like, dude, come on, stop being so dramatic.
Well,
But
Mike, it was so
yeah,
awesome to connect with you and unpack so many of your stories today. You just continue to play, you continue to seek edges, and you continue to do it with youthful enthusiasm. And I'm going to look forward to following your journey and seeing all the cool things that you have up and coming for the rest of this year and beyond. And as we wrap things up, man, any last minute thoughts that you'd love to share with our community?
no, I just think like if you can find something that excites you, I think that's one of the biggest things that I've been able to harness over the years is like I always have something that's really burning desire for me. Like going forward, like I want to do a big run on the Appalachian Trail, so that's like a big project for 2024, and then hopefully rowing across the Atlantic. So I've got a couple things on the horizon, but I think all of us can find that. Maybe it's those are kind of my things, but maybe for someone in your audience that hasn't done a 5K, maybe it's a 5K, maybe it's a they want to go up a peak that they haven't done, or they want to learn how to beat their kids in chess or something. Like it doesn't have to be all physically related, but just something that fires you up and excites you, and go out and try to get after it.
There you have it, guys. Wise words from the legendary Mike Wardian. Where can people find you, man?
So I do social media quite a bit. So I'm on Instagram, and that's just at MikeWard, like dog, IAN like Nancy. Same for Twitter, and then Facebook. And then I just started doing TikTok, but I'm like Michael Wardian 1687 or something weird there. So yeah, most of the time Instagram or Facebook and Twitter.
Very cool, man. Well, thanks so much for doing this. For those of you listening or observing on YouTube, if you enjoyed my conversation with Mike Wardian today, please rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends. Until next time, guys. Thanks so much, Mike. We'll talk soon.
All right, man. Bye, guys.
Are you over 35 and in need of a solid training program? Are you looking to improve your athleticism and keep up with the younger athletes in your CrossFit gym? Then look no further than our Invictus Masters program. This program places year-round emphasis on mobility and stability exercises with movements that we have seen directly benefit our Masters athletes. Our program is led by Nicole DeHart and offers a training program designed specifically for Masters athletes who are looking to compete at a higher level in the sport of CrossFit. Some of our top Masters athletes in the world train with us, including CrossFit Games champion Kevin Kester, Matt Beals, and Pat Sprague. You can learn more about their stories and the Invictus Masters program by checking out their episodes right here on the Invictus Mindset Podcast. If you'd like more information about the current training cycle or to join the Invictus Masters program, please email Nicole at invictusathlete.com. That's NICHOLE at invictusathlete.com.